negative. All right, so can we solve this? If you notice, we don't need this large, all the Q's and P's to solve it, because everything is already in percentage terms, so we can just use this. Plug in what we know and solve for what we don't know. We do know what our elasticity is. Our elasticity is 1.1111. Percentage change in Q is what we're trying to find. And we know our percentage change in P is 3.7%. All right. Now, can we solve this? One of those things, again, we learned way back when, was cross multiplication. All right. I never liked the way it was taught in high school. I thought they teach it harder than it has to be. All right. But so be it. To solve for this, all right, it will be 1.1111 times how do I know that's the right way to do this? We know whatever you do on one side of the equal sign has to be done on the same side of the equal sign to keep the equation balanced. All right. So I am trying to get rid of this 3.7%. To get rid of this 3.7%, if I multiply this side by 3.7%, can I then cancel those out? And then leave a percentage change in Q, which is what I want at the end of the day. But if I multiply this side by 3.7%, I have to multiply this by 3.7%. That's how cross multiplication works. All right, let me. So then, somebody with a calculator, it looks like 5.
I got 4.1111.
What is my places, please? 1, 1.
4 ones.
But what do we say about demand? We said demand fell because price went up. So we need to stick a negative sign in front of that. Can you do that again if you see it in your homework?
So we only basically use them a negative or positive to decipher whether there's an increase or a drop?
Well, we know the law of demand. The law of demand says price and quantity go in opposite directions. So if I give you a price that's going up, you know quantity has to go down. All right. And because our elasticity is always in absolute value terms, we don't know whether this 1.111 was initially negative and we made it absolute value, always positive.
Okay.
All right. So, can I erase this? All right, fine. On the other hand, let's give you the elasticity. Right. I give you elasticity, and let's say we find that the quantity demanded fell from 333 units to 290 units. Right. you're asked to find percentage change in price. Again, you need 2 out of the 3. But in this case, you have the P's from the P in percentage from here, but you have all the Q's from up top. But can we still make it work? All we would need to do is convert these Q's into percentage, right? And then we'll have percent at top, we have elasticity, and we could calculate our percent to the bottom. Sorry? No, you're mumbling or you're talking to me?
No, I was saying some, I mean, so you have the old and the new quantity, so you just do the basic working.
Right, so you said, I can solve the Q's because I have Q's. And then I can use those Q, that will give me my percentage change in Q. And that will allow me, once I have the elasticity, to calculate my percentage change in P. All right. So again, let's plug in what we know and solve for what we don't know. We know E of D, right, is an absolute value term, 0.8237 equals. And I can take my Q's, all right, I got 290 minus 333, right? New minus old, divided by old, right? This is the new Q, this is the original Q, so new minus old divided by old. And I want to find yes? All right. So let's see what we can do about solving this. We don't have to do anything with that for the moment. All right, this part, 290 minus 33 is what? That's 43. Isn't 290 minus 33 minus 43?
Yeah, mine
43.
That's 43. All right. Divided by percentage change in P. All right. So I'm still trying to solve my way. All I'm doing at this stage, plugging in what I know and trying to solve for what I don't know. So I'm still 0.8237. Now minus 43 times divided by 3333.
Negative 0.1291.
What's after the 1?
2929.
All right, so 0.91 divided by percentage change in P. Right. But we want percentage change in P by itself, so how do we go about getting that? Yes, but those are words. How do I cross multiply to get my percentage change in P?
Times the 0.8237 by the 0.1291.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry? So you're saying to get P by itself, I multiply this by this?
You'll have to bring it over, right?
You bring it over.
No, what we did last time was different, because what we did last time was we had this bottom value. So we had this bottom, we were looking for the top value. All right. So what we're trying to do then, we're trying to get P by itself. Cross multiplication, let's say, let me use a different color. What if I put my P up top there? right? Bring it on the side. So what do I then do with this?
So we divide.
Okay, let's do it the long way. 0.8237 minus 0.1291 over percentage change in P. All right. To get P by itself, one way we can do that if we turn this equation upside down, right? So P will be on top. If you turn this equation upside down, we'll have to turn this equation upside down, right? Follow me? So to turn this equation upside down, this will now be 1 over 0.8237, right? Isn't that turning it upside down? Equals percentage change in P over negative 0.1291. So, this is how we had it the last time, and we take this one and multiply by this equation to get this by itself. All right. That is simply 0.1291 over 0.8237 equals percentage change in P, which is what we did here. So, tell you what I'll do.
Why did you multiply it? Why did you divide it? Instead of multiplying it?
No, I didn't divide it. Why I multiplied, it came to top.
I mean, when you carry the negative 0 point,
Mhm.
carry it over, wouldn't it be?
1 over 0.8237 times 0.1291 over 1. All right. I'll send you a quick note. That'll probably be the easiest thing to do. Rules of cross multiplication. There's only 2 rules. All right.
Is this on our homework?
Sorry? Cross multiplication?
No, this a question like this?
Yes. Questions, I think what? 8 and 9 are both like this, if I remember correctly. That's the homework. Yes. Question 8 gives you elasticity and gives you 2 prices and actually define quantity. And question 9 gives you a percentage on elasticity and actually defined quantity. Or maybe we can just write it down. Fine. There's only 2. Easy enough. All right. Put it down somewhere so you don't lose it. Some note in the back of your book somewhere. All right. A equals B over C. All right. A times C equals B. C is equal to B over A. So this tells you A equals B over C. Let me rewrite this. B equals C times A. C, so we know what A is. A is B over C. B is C times A, and C is B divided by A. just taking like on a little margin or something, you know, so something you could refer to when you're doing work and you sort of, I think I'm supposed to do it this way, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing it the right way. All right, cross multiplication. All right. So those are the kind of questions that you're going to see on the homework that's you've got tonight. It's due next Monday. Now, back to our discussion. We were on page 9 if you're following in your notes. Now, we began talking last class, at the beginning of last class, about the motivation behind why elasticity is so important to firms, right? And their ability to price products, because it's going to determine how much money they can make from each product that they sell, or how much revenue. Right? So elasticity and revenue are intricately related. If you will, top of page 10, let's begin with what we know. We know that revenue for any firm represents income that can be utilized by the firm to purchase factors of production, goods, materials and labor, as well as meet financing costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Revenue is generated from the sale of goods and services and the price that is charged for those goods and services. Therefore, revenue is a product of price and quantity demanded. This is something you know already. Right? So we know revenue is P times Q, quantity demanded. Right? Easy enough. We know from the law of demand that quantity demanded and price are inversely related or negatively related, which means they move in the opposite direction to each other. However, to determine how revenue will change when there's a change in the price, we must compare the price changes to the rate of change in which quantity demanded changes. Well, that's a very convoluted sentence. Fine. In other words, we look at the percentage change in the price level and compare it to the percentage change in quantity demanded. All right, let's see what all that means. Let's start with what we know about elastic demand. We know that demand is said to be elastic if consumers are very responsive or very sensitive to a change in the price. Right. So, when a firm increases its price, it finds that it loses customers and sales even faster than the income gained from the price rise. So, here's a firm with a product that is elastic, whose demand is elastic. This says, if that's the case, I raise my price. We know by law of demand says quantity demand is going to fall. But because people are very sensitive or very responsive, when I start playing around my price, I find that my quantity demand falls much faster, much more. Right? So I raise my price, but I lose a heck of a lot more customers. What is likely to happen to my revenue? We would expect then revenue to go down. Right? Because even though every item I sell, I make more money from it because I raise the price on it, I lose a lot of potential sales. Right? And the losses more than offset any extra money I may have made from raising my price. All right. So that's the first one. That is when you have a product whose demand is elastic. There's something going on here somewhere on the attendance sheet. So what if demand for your product is inelastic? All right. People need this. They ain't got no choice about whether to get this or not. Demand is very inelastic, or this doesn't take very much of the income, so they don't really care one way or the other. If you increase or decrease the price by a couple of cents, it ain't gonna make no difference to them one way or the other. All right. So you have a product whose demand is inelastic. All right. Again, let's look at revenue. Revenue is price times quantity. Right? So what happens then? We raise our price. We know by definition demand is going to fall. But because demand for this product is inelastic, people insensitive, we see demand falls by a relatively paltry amount. All right? KFC is the example I like to turn to all the time. Raise the price, they lose some sales, but not enough to offset the increase in price. The inevitable result is revenue goes up. So, sorry, let me. Okay, let me put the other one back up so we can have something to compare. All right. What about unitary elastic, right? Where your demand is exactly equal to -1. Demand for your product is unitary elastic or unit elastic. Right? So again, similarly, you raise your price. Right? Demand falls, but demand falls by exactly the same. What is likely to happen to revenue? Revenue is unchanged. Right, that flat line means unchanged. Question for you. Why is it that we have varying ticket prices for, say, airline seats? We're all going to the same place, right? But you have airline tickets in coach, but even coach has multiple fares. Yeah, if you choose your seat, or if you want to sit near the aisle, or if you want to sit near the window, or if you show up late, say you purchase a ticket at the counter as opposed to purchase a ticket 6 weeks ahead online. And we're not even talking about business class versus coach. We're just talking about, in this case, just in economy class. Why? Well, we're talking about elasticity. So clearly, it must have something to do with elasticity.
So demand for,
Right, we're past demand. Demand is simple stuff. We're saying, here, we're not talking about demand anymore, we're talking about sensitivities. How hard we can squeeze people, because that's what elasticity is. You know, when we're talking about sensitivity, we're saying, I want to know, think about this. Let's say you are you're planning a family vacation. Something you tend to plan well ahead of time, right? So you can purchase tickets well ahead of time. You can shop around for tickets to get the best price. Right? So you're most likely going to get the best price for these seats that the airline has. Right? But then, what about the business person that the company sends in the last minute to some conference or seminar or meeting someplace? He's going to show up at the airport looking to buy a ticket on the company credit card, of course. Right. Is he going to be very sensitive to changing the price?
No.
He got to fly. Right. So an airline knows that I can get away with charging him an arm and a leg because one, he's showing up in the last minute, which probably means he got to go. As opposed to you who book your ticket 3 weeks ahead, means that you can always change it. Because most likely, if you're buying your ticket 3 weeks ahead, this is going to be a refundable ticket. Right? So you have options to change in your flights and do all kind of nonsense. So you are much more sensitive to them playing around with the price, because you have options. If you show up at the last minute, maybe not. Right? If you show up with a family, you're not very sensitive to changing price. Yeah. Y'all already, y'all gotta go. All right. Airlines know that, let's say there is a delay, there's a cancellation, people wanna go home. I can find all kind of, I know in that case people are very insensitive to changing the prices. So I can price my tickets accordingly. And airlines do this for, there are some airlines, I think the most recent one I saw was for coach alone, you could have 15 different fares, right, just in coach. Right. If you sign up, you go online and purchase a ticket, and you insist that, you know what, I want to sit on the aisle. I don't want aisle, because I gotta get up often, I gotta go to the bathroom. So you don't need it. The fact that you say I want an aisle seat means that you are insensitive, at least a little bit more insensitive to the price of an aisle versus the price of a window seat. So I can charge you $20 or $30 more. Airlines learned maybe about a decade ago about bags. That, you know, when people carry luggage, they want the luggage to get where they're going to. So you ain't want to leave your luggage behind. And people always pack clothes when they go. You know, if I charge you all $30 for a bag, would you leave the bag home? No. Right? Y'all want overstuff your bag because y'all going shopping. If the bag is over 50 pounds, I charge you an extra $50. What you can do? You can shift around those things as much as you like. Right? Sooner or later, I can catch you with this extra $50 or $70. To change an airline ticket. Anybody ever try to change an airline ticket? Why? Because you could pay it. Because you will pay it. You're insensitive. Airlines are great with this. Concerts, also sporting events, have sort of done the same thing, but in a much more controlled fashion. So they'll have a limited number of ticket prices. Right? So you may have general entry. Then you have what? VIP. Then you have platinum VIP. So you've gone in platinum VIP, or even better from the concert promoter's perspective, someone take you in platinum VIP. He can spend money for everything else in platinum VIP. Because you don't just want to watch the concert, you want something to drink. Which means whatever drink in platinum VIP is going to be overpriced by an amazing amount. Because he is going to be insensitive to changing the price. Elasticity. Right? Believe me, firms are much more interested in elasticity, the relative elastic demand for their product, than the actual price. Right? The price itself is very rarely an issue. They want to know, how can I change the price to cause, oops, why am I missing this? To cause a change in revenue. Right. So, let's go for the high elastic, let's talk about elastic demand. We said, if we raise the price, demand falls, we lose money. If you know this about your product, how do you make money? You know demand for your product is elastic. You know people are very sensitive to a change in the price. You know when you raise your price, you lose a lot of customers. Right? But you're in the business of making money, so how do you make money? What if we turn all those upside down? Because to make money means I want my revenue to go up. Right? I want my revenue to go up. What would happen if I lower my price? We know demand is going to go up. But isn't it just like how when we raise our price, demand fell much more? If we lower our price, wouldn't demand go up much more? Because people are just as sensitive or responsive to a change in the price. Whether the price goes up or goes down, people are going to respond strongly. All right. So if I found that I raised my price and I lost money, okay, then all right, and I understand that means that my product is probably elastic demand. So I say, okay, I have a little sale. All right. I know that, let's say I have a little 5% sale. Elasticity says that by definition, my demand is going to go up by more than 5%. Because in order in order for that demand to be elastic, a change in price causes a change in quantity demanded by more than the change in the price. So if the price goes down by 5%, my sales is going to go up by more than 5%. Now I don't know how much more than 5%, but now it's going to go up by more than 5%. That's good enough for me, because as long as this goes up by more than 5%, that means I come out ahead. All right, because I have more sales than what I lost by lowering the price. Right? More customers buying more products than the money I lost by lowering the price. All right. So if you are, and we talked about the Rubens mantra way back when, where you have multiple sales all through the year. Right? Then you have people who do it much smarter. All right. John Bull on Bay Street has a sale once a year. All right. And it's only like 10%. But people empty out offices on downtown to go into John Bull for the sale. Why? Remember we talked about how at the upper end of the demand equation, a demand curve, where we're very elastic. The higher the price is, the more elastic our demand is. Well, that's John Bull, yeah, on Bay Street. Traditionally, an expensive store. Right? So they know that for an expensive store selling expensive products, demand tends to be elastic. All right? And they know that a small little sale is going to cause a big increase in foot traffic. All right? So they don't make a big deal about it. They don't have sales all the time. They make it once a year. And it makes you seem like this is something special. Y'all need to get in on this because, we only do this once a year. Yeah. And then, of course, there are some companies that try to trick you by saying, end of year sale, closing out sale, inventory sale. We don't want counted so we can try and sell it cheaper. That's just sales tactic. But it amounts to the same thing. All right. So when we're talking about revenue, then, why you make me erase that? I get it right all over again. All right, let's do it even. For elastic demand, all right. Well, E of D is greater than 1. See, I'm writing out properly now. All right. We know that revenue is price times quantity. All right. If revenue goes up, quantity demanded goes by a much greater amount, and therefore revenue falls. However, if you lower the price, quantity demanded goes up by a much bigger amount, revenue rises. All right. For inelastic demand, and this is where, E of D is less than 1. Right. Again, we're trying to understand what happens with revenue. In this case, when we raise our price, we find that quantity demanded falls relatively small amount, therefore,
Is that supposed to be R times and elastic R times P or R equal?
where
Or equal. For you?
revenue
No, the
equals,
first one.
revenue
Elastic.
equals price times quantity.
Elastic.
No,
The
on the
next side.
elastic.
Revenue
Yeah,
equals
revenue
price times quantity.
Your
Revenue
times. Yeah.
Sorry. Good catch. Okay. All right. On the other hand, so I found that I raised my price. I didn't lose a lot of customers. Revenue goes up. The last thing I want to do then is have any kind of sale, because even though I lower my price, I don't get a lot of extra customers. Revenue falls. I can't figure what happened. I haven't sale, but I ain't getting no extra, money coming in. Right. What happens very often, firms in this situation who don't realize this, they end up having a bigger and bigger sale each time. Right. They figure, I have a 5-cent sale, but I didn't see a big jump in foot traffic, so I think, maybe people just need bigger incentive. Right, so next time I have 10%, 15%, 20%, and I keep finding that I'm lowering my price, but I'm not seeing the kind of return that I'm expecting. That's because your demand for your product is inelastic. And finally, unitary elastic. This is where E of D is exactly equal to 1. Right. Revenue equals price times quantity demanded. Right. And this is a case where I raised my price by 10% or 5% or whatever, and my demand fell by exactly the same amount. All right. And the result is my revenue didn't change. All right, so I said, okay, instead I'll have a sale, and I get in just enough extra customers to exactly offset the loss from lowering the price. The result is the same, revenue didn't change. All right. So for a product whose demand is unitary elastic, increasing or raising the price doesn't do anything for your revenue. Okay. That is all you will need to get through your first homework. All right. Now, any questions on the homework before we move on? Anyone who's not signed to register?
Could you give a grading schedule? First class?
Grading schedule.
Class at 9?
I did give a course outline. I may have an extra somewhere, maybe. I do.
Can I make a copy of that?
The course outline? Yeah, you're in luck. Okay. Now, we have a problem. Everything we've done so far only applies to the first homework. All right. In particular, and more specifically, our elasticity calculation only works for the first homework. Right? So, two things. One, I don't want you committed to memory, because we're going to override that memory in a second. All right? And secondly, you don't need to commit to memory anyhow, because I don't ask you to remember formulas in this class. I ask you to be able to use the formulas. All right? So this stuff, the formula, I will give it to you whenever we have a homework or test or exam. Because it's not terribly important you being able to regurgitate a formula. Right? Because almost all of your problems are going to be word problems, and the idea is that you are able to understand the concept and be able to apply those concepts in answering the problems. All right. So, here's the problem, and here's why we want to fix it. First, let me show you the problem. All right. And we can stick with our shoe example. Price, quantity. All right, here's our demand for shoes. Let's see. What was the price initially? 125? Price is 110. And went up to 125. Right. At 110, how many pairs of shoes were being sold? 200. And at 125, how many pairs of shoes were being sold?
180.
So does that look like an accurate depiction of our problem? Right. Right. And in fact, just to help us out, let's call Q0, Q1, P0, P1. Q0 we said was 200. 180, 110, 125, right? And when we did this, we end up with elasticity of absolute 0.7331. Correct?
No, Q0 and Q1.
Q0 and Q1. Okay. So this summarizes what we did already. This store, whoever runs the store, had the bright idea to raise their price from $110 to $125 per pair of shoes. All right. And they found their sales fell by 20 pairs of shoes per week or per month, whatever it is. Right. This was unacceptable to them. Oops, I made a mistake, I screwed up. So, I want to reverse my decision. Right? I want to go back to my original price, $110. Right? And see, and I would expect then to my sales to go back to where it was, correct? So, let's do that. Now, our new Q0 would that not be 180? Right. Because this is the second month. The first month we did this, and we ended with this. Now we're trying to walk back our previous action. So we have a new Q1 of 180, sorry, new Q0 of 180, a new Q1 of 200, a new P0 of 125, and a new P1, 110. What should our elasticity be? Shouldn't it be the same? I mean, intuitively, it should be the same. Let's run it and see. All right. I mean, we got time. So, let's call it our new elasticity, ED1. We have P's and Q's, so we need the expanded version. And expanded version is Q1 minus Q0 divided by Q0 over P1 minus P0. Yes? All right, so can we plug and chug? All right. Q1 is what? 200? Q0 is 180 divided by 180 over P1 is 110 minus 125 divided by 125. Okay. We went from this one. We went from 110 to 125 and from 200 to 180. So we went along this curve here. All right, we went along that stretch. When price went from 110 to 125. All right, so in fact we went in this direction. And when we went in that direction, we had an E of D of 0.7331. I know you can't see it, but, all right. Okay, fine.
7331.
When we went along the demand curve, in that direction, our elasticity, 200 minus 180 is 20, divided by 180. And 110 minus 125 is minus 15 divided by 125. Which is 20 divided by 80? By 180, sorry. 0.1111. And 50 divided by 125. Sorry? I need 4 decimal places, please. 1200. All right, and 111 divided by 112, negative 0.9258. Do I have any dissenting voices? Absolute 0.92. What did we do wrong? Did we do anything wrong?
That's surely not the same.
You sure we do nothing wrong?
You did?
We plugged and chugged everything the way we were supposed to.
It's supposed to be the same.
I don't think it's supposed to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same.
Why?
Because
You raise your price by $15 and then turn around the very next month and lower your price and went back down by $15. Your sales fell by 20 pairs, then it went back up by 20 pairs. Does that sound symmetrical?
It sounds symmetrical, but
Okay, hold on a second. So when we went up, we went 0. When we went back down, we had elasticity. You have the feeling, but how can we translate that feeling into some economic rationale?
Does it have something to do with the fact that the old figures change when you comparing the problem? That makes sense?
Did the figures change? No. You lower your price this month, and next month you raise you raise your price this month, and next month you've gone back to exactly where you was before.
No, but, okay, but when you do the first problem,
Mm-hmm.
we had 180 minus 200 divided by 200, but
Mhm.
now we using 200 minus 180 divided by 180. so the base figure changes?
Right, I mean, the math says the numbers coming out different. All right, and we understand the math, the question is though, what about the economic? Why would it be different? The math says it's different, but conceptually, why would, because understand what this is saying. This is saying, along this stretch of our demand curve, we have two different elasticities. Along the same, we didn't move anywhere outside of this stretch. All right, but we have two different elasticities.
Okay, is it because, okay, so the second one with 0.925 is obviously higher than the rate of change for the first 0.7731.
Okay.
So do customers respond more to the drop in price than they respond to the increase in price?
That's exactly what that's saying. All right, that's saying, when I lower my price, people are much more responsive than when I raise my price. Now, demand is not elastic, it's still not elastic, it's still inelastic,
Yeah.
all right,
It's at a higher
but
rate.
it's, can we say less inelastic? Because it's closer to one. All right. But you see the problem, all right? You lower your price and raise your price by exactly the same amount, so you're on the exact same portion of your demand curve, but you have two different elasticities, whether you're going up or you're coming down the demand curve. All right? And that has been a major problem that's been plaguing elasticity for a very long time, up until the 1970s. Right? How do we address this issue? If you look at any demand curve, right, whether you go up or down along the same little piece of demand curve, you end up with two different elasticities. That is, people are not symmetrically sensitive or symmetrically responsive. All right? People react differently whether you're raising the price or lowering the price, even though it's by the exact same amount. All right? So how do we address that? All right? We did the exact same calculation as we supposed to and came up with two different numbers. All right. Let's go back to the basics. And this is why we're not going to be using this formula at all after this first homework. All right. We're saying that elasticity is the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. All right? That is our basic understanding of elasticity. All right? And to break this down, this is Q1 minus Q0. All right? And Q1 minus Q0 is the absolute change. Right? It's what it was and what it is now. It's the absolute change. And then we divided that by the previous value. Right? Similarly, we took the absolute change in the price and we divided that by the original price. All right? That's what we did. All right? Now, we found that this does not give us the kind of precision we're going to need in trying to solve this kind of problem. All right? So what we needed to do then, and it wasn't, econometricians didn't really do this until the late 70s, we need a way of more precisely defining these terms. All right? So that this definition that we've used since, I don't know, the Greek days, is no longer good enough, or more particularly, it's no longer precise enough for our measurements. So, what you did instead is that, you know what, if we want to really precisely measure elasticity, what we really need is the absolute change And if we divide that, instead of by the original amount, if we divide that by the average change, we think that will give us so, let me clean this up, this diagram up for a second, and let's see if we can graph that and see how it looks. Now, where are we? We had, this was $110, and this was 200 units. This was $125, and this was 180 units, all right. So, the absolute change then says we measure the difference So we measure the absolute change, and then we measure the average change. Right. So we're still measuring the same distance. So we said, okay, we see how much it changed in absolute value terms, and then we see what the average change is. And we think if we did it right, that should give us the same elasticity whether we move up or down the demand curve. The only way to ascertain if that is true is that we work it out and see what happens. All right. I need to clean some space. Again, I'm much more interested in us understanding the concepts. All right? The math is going to come get what I've found in this class or really in this institute. Y'all could do math. The math ain't the issue. You give you a good calculator and some pointers, and you go off and do the math. The conceptual part of it is much more difficult concept. All right, let's do exactly the same thing, but using hopefully this new and improved version. All right, since I have lots of P's and Q's, I'm going to skip the percentage thing, and I just go, it's Q1 now minus Q0. Remember, that was my absolute. And I want to divide that now by the average. The average of that will be Q0 plus Q1 over 2. Isn't that how you find the average? Mm-hmm. Right. So this is absolute, and this is average. And we do the same thing for price. Okay, now let's see if all of that works out the way we expect it to. If we're correct, then we're going to get the same elasticity up or down. All right, so let's see if we can do ED0, which is our original elasticity, using our original numbers. All right, and originally our Q1 was 180. Minus 200 divided by, now in this case, it'll be 200 plus 180 over 2. All right. And we do the same thing for price. All right. Price was 110 minus 125 divided by 125 plus 110 over 2. Right. Hopefully I left enough space. All right, so 180 minus 200 is minus 20, divided by 200 plus 180 is 380, over 2 is 190. 110 minus 125 is 15. 125 plus 110 is 235. 235 divided by 2 is what, 117.5? 117.5.
Probably negative 15 is one.
No.
125 minus 110?
110
minus
125.
125.
Negative 15.
Because we got it back, no, Q1.
No.
This is backwards.
Yeah.
What's it?
It's P1 minus P0.
Zero, so it
Yeah,
should be
yeah, sorry.
125 minus 110.
Thank you.
So it is 15.
Okay. All right. And what's 20 divided by 190?
Zero point 1052.
What's after the 2?
5 6. Yeah.
5, 3? All right. And 15 divided by 117.5?
1277.
0.1277. All right. So you see what it says. If this is the percentage change in quantity, and this is the percentage change in price. All right. Price changed by 12.77%, but quantity only changed by 10%. So demand would be, I raised my price by 12, sales only fell by 10. Demand would be inelastic. All right, let's see. There's supposed to be a negative sign somewhere, and there's the negative sign. All right. So this better be less than 1 after what I just said.
Yeah. 8246.
8246, you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 8245 8888.
8246. All right. So 0.8246. Okay. Let's see. All right. So ED1. 200 minus 180 divided by 180 plus 200 over 2, all over 110 minus 125 divided by 125 plus 110 over 2. All right. So ED1, 200 minus 180 is 20. This is 190
190, yes.
over, this is minus 15 divided by 117.5. 20 minus 190, we said, is 0.1053. And 15 divided by 175, we said, is 0.1277. And we said it came out to negative, because that's a negative there, 0.8246. That's a negative sign missing here. Which means this turns out to be, in absolute value terms, 0.8246. Sorry? So now, once we improve our way of calculating the elasticity, we found that it's the same whether we go up or down. Right? So that makes it much more important to us. And this is called, in your notes, where are we? Oh, we gone that far already?
13.
Sorry, midpoint formula. Called the midpoint formula, and this is the way we are going to calculate this going forth. And in fact, this was discovered by a philosopher, a French philosopher. I know you've heard of Rene Descartes. I don't worry about it. He's a very famous French philosopher. Descartes, if you ever want to look it up. Descartes, Descartes. Right. But I guess in his spare time he did a little math. So, yeah, but a lot of people have been worrying about this for a very long time and finally resolve it as a math problem. Okay, so that allows us to calculate elasticity along what is called an arc of the demand curve, a stretch of the demand curve. Right. But that's not what we always want. Right? So all this says, if you're a business person, right, this allows you to determine what's the elasticity when you change your price. Because see, that's all we're doing here. The only way they were able to determine the elasticity for this product is when the price changed. Right? What if you wanted to know what the elasticity is, how sensitive your customers are to a given price? Not a change in the price, but that specific price. Right? And that requires us to tinker with this formula just a little bit. Can I erase this? You know what, let's leave it for the moment. All right. So instead of looking at the elasticity along this stretch, what if we only want to know the elasticity at this particular point on the demand curve? How do we go about determining that? And that brings us to what is called I'm pretty sure I included this in your notes.
Yeah, I think
The point elasticity of demand, and colloquially, is that the right word? The midpoint formula. And it's the kind of thing that you come across quite often, actually. The midpoint formula says that, sorry, where am I? Let me skip. Page 14?
No, it starts on 12. You go into the first part of it.
Page 14. Point elasticity demand. All right. Special extension of the midpoint formula. All right. So the way this works is you have a demand function, right? So you paid some person or some firm to do some research on your product or your products, and they've come up with, usually it's like some consulting firm or something like that, and they come up with a formula and they said, okay, this is the demand function for your product. All right. So in this case, yes, all right. They gave us a demand function. I'm lost here. So for this product, our demand equation is 125 minus 5p. Yes. So what we want to know then is that, no, I need to clean this because the numbers here don't apply to this problem, and it's going to stretch us to try and drag this into where it doesn't belong. So here's your demand equation. Now, the point elasticity demand formula says that elasticity, if you want to calculate elasticity, you take dq dp times p over q. Right. Anyone who's done any differential equation, not differential equation, differentiation, calculus? No? Even the first beginning? No?
We did it.
Well, yeah, but,
Well,
okay. Yes, you did, even though you didn't know you did.
okay.
When you did the slopes, you may have done it in high school. I'm sure you did rise over run in high school. Yeah, you don't remember that far back. Because you wasn't really paying attention, 'cause you probably was 15, 16 and all into boys, you know. We understand. Fine. Rise over run. So we're saying the slope of any demand curve is this thing. How much quantity changes when price changes. Alright? So we're saying if we take an equation like this, again, we would have done this for those who did macro way back when, even if you did macro with me, you know that this thing here, minus 5, is the slope of this curve. This says that when price changes by $1, demand is going to change by -5 units. So if price goes up by $1, demand is going to fall by 5. If price goes down by $1, demand is going to go up by 5. All right. So this -5 is the slope of the demand curve. All right. The slope of any curve is nothing more than the first derivative or differentiation of this equation. I'm sure y'all did this. Y'all don't have to take math in this BIFS.
Some of us, the class so long, the math class in micro, long time.
And y'all didn't do differentiation? Okay. All right, forget, I ain't teaching that no more. I am not about to teach differentiation. Just enough for us to get through what we need to do. All right.
I will look it up.
This thing here, this whole piece here is the slope. All right. Of any demand function you have, this whole piece. No calculation necessary. This is the slope. In this case, this is -5. All right. If you had an equation that says QD equals 36 minus 2P, this would be -2. All right. So this, whenever you have a demand equation, this piece here, this whole piece, is always this little number right in front of the P, including the sign. All right. Okay. So then, if that's the case, then you need two things. For you to be, you need to be given two things. I'm just trying to clean this up. -5P. So, you would need to be given the equation, obviously, and you will need to be given either a P or a Q. So, because if I give you a P, clearly you can find a Q. And if I give you the Q, you can find a P. Right? Here, you need both P and Q, and you need this. All right, the slope. Now, the slope is going to come from the equation. So to solve this, you need this and this and that. All right. So if I give you this, I have to give you either one of the other to solve the third one. All right. So If we're continuing with what we have in our notes, bottom page 14, let's, top of page 15. You see where, this is the third set of dots where it says dq/dp is -5. Now let's assume p equals 17. So you'll be given a problem, and in this case, you're given the fact that p is 17. Given that information, can we solve for the elasticity, the point elasticity demand for this product? All right. So then, again, plug and chug. This, we said, this whole thing is the slope. And P they gave us as 17. So now we need to figure out what Q is. All right. All right. Mhm. Well, to find Q, why don't we take our P and stick it in our demand equation? Wouldn't that do it for us? So to find Q then, say QD is 36 minus 2 times 17. Yes, John?
Where we get this grade from?
Where we get?
QD 36.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
25. Nice,
All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. 25 minus 5P. All right. QD equals 125 minus 5 times 17. 5 7s is 35, put a 5 and carry a 3, 5 1s are 5 and 3 is 8. 125 minus 85. That gives me 40. So now I know then, my E of D is minus 5 times 17 over 40. All right. Again, you've learned you solve your equation first with 70 divided by 40.
0.425.
4250 and multiply by 5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 2.125.
0.
Sorry, no, let's start again. It's 2 or 0.2?
2. 2.125.
2.1250.
Do you need to put that in absolute?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. So demand for this is quite elastic. So what did I do wrong? I did 17 instead of 15? Yeah, but why is my book wrong?
You use 17 in the book of 15 for the price.
You said
And you're
17, the book is 15.
Unless your book of 17 now.
15.
Your book of 15?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why y'all didn't insult me to do 15?
Because you say 17, you just give us the random price. So we stick with that.
No, I want to stick close to the book so when you go, see now y'all make me have to redo all this all over again with 15.
Just erase out the 7.
No, that ain't that simple because I still got to do all the recalculation.
Let's do it over. Let's do it over.
Come on, we can help you.
That's
That
what
was
you
a
get.
good way to show us another example.
Yeah, let's do this.
What's the
Let's
difference?
do
You
the
didn't want
17
to-
the 15.
No, don't try fix it up now.
Okay, let's do it. Like what?
It is 15, for sure.
As a point.
All right, 15. And
So we're using the price of 15.
Y'all say the price is 15, right?
Yeah, the bulk is the price is 15.
Yeah,
Okay, so what's 5 times 15?
75.
So why get 85?
Cause you want
17.
Okay. All right, so 125 minus 75
50.
is 50. And 15 divided by 50. All right, fine, that is 5. 0.3.
Oh, to change the whole thing.
Yes. You see, what's 15 divided by 50?
So it's negative 1.5.
15 divided by 50?
No, sorry, yeah, 0.3.
0, 0, 0.
Yeah, what you want?
So that gives me negative 1.5,
Yes, sir.
which is absolute 1.5. Okay, does that look right?
That's what the program now.
Okay.
See, there's enough to erase.
Okay, so. All we've done so far, we've looked at how sensitive we are, how sensitive demand is to changes in the price level. All
So
right.
demand in this case would be about 1.5.
No, this is elasticity, is 1.5. So it's elastic, the demand is elastic. But what I'm saying is that everything to this point, we've talked about how sensitive our consumers are to change in the price level. Because that's what demand is all about. Quantity demand is about consumers' demand. So we looked at how sensitive consumers are to change in the price level. But there's the other side of that transaction, our side, the firm side. All right? So really, in this case, we also want to be interested in how sensitive supply is to change in the price level. Right? How quickly do we respond as the shop owners, as the retailers, to changes in the market price for a good or service? Because you know that the market price is not really determined by us. Right? We price our product and hoping to see how much of our product will be sold at that price. Right? If we find that our sales are not as we expected at that price, then we know we priced it too high. Right? As a retailer, you never, ever, ever know exactly what the market price is. You're trying to find the market price. You're trying to find that sweet spot that we talked about last time where demand is exactly equal to supply. That's the price that we're trying to find. So you tinker around with your price and see how close you get to that. The problem is consumers' tastes and preferences are always changing and screwing around with our ability to properly price our product. So one of the things that we are very interested in then is how sensitive we are to change in the price level. How quickly do we respond when we see we can't sustain the price that we currently have our products priced at? Right? And this is called the price elasticity of supply, or E of S. And we're going to go through this fairly quickly because all the stuff that we talked about for elasticity of demand, the general concept remains the same. Middle of page 15, if you will. We know that applying the law of supply brings us to the conclusion that for normal goods, as the price rises, quantity supplied rises, and as the price falls, quantity supplied also falls, all other things being equal. However, it is important to note that the price and quantity supplied are directly or positively related. It is often even more important to know how sensitive firms or suppliers are to changes in the price level. If you flip the page, Supply is said to be elastic. Supply is said to be elastic if firms are very responsive or sensitive to changes in the price level. More specifically, supply is said to be elastic if a 1% change in the price level leads to a greater than 1% change in quantity supplied. The reverse is true for inelastic supply. Supply is said to be inelastic if firms are very unresponsive or insensitive to changes in the price level. More specifically, supply is said to be inelastic if a 1% change in the price level leads to a smaller than 1% change in quantity supplied. And of course, uninelastic supply, or unitary elastic supply, supply is said to be uninelastic or unitary elastic if, do your book says uninelastic demand?
Yeah.
That should be uninelastic supply. I thought maybe I was seeing something wrong.
Where? Elastic what?
Middle of page 16, unit elastic, that should be supply.
That's the last
That's the last
section.
one in our page.
Oh.
Okay, skip. Flip the page. Determinants of price elasticity of supply. Yeah, all that stuff, we spent time doing that last class.
So which page?
18. Determinant is only one that's going to affect the price elasticity of supply, and that is time. The more time that firms have to adjust to a change in the price level, the more sensitive these firms will be to a change in the price level, or the more elastic will be supply. Given more time, firms can always make adjustments in production and on distribution to accommodate changes in prices. This is easy enough. All it's saying is, listen, if price goes up and goes high and stays high, now all of a sudden I'm going to start bringing in more of these things, whatever it is that I'm selling. Cars is a good example. I was recently in the market for a new vehicle because my old one, I was just getting old. And once it's hiccups on me once, then because I don't change tire, I don't do battery, I don't do oil or any of that under the hood kind of stuff. So, yeah, I went to school, so I wouldn't have to do stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
It's all little stupid little boys who ain't do nothing in class all day.
Uh-huh. That's what you.
Yes, though.
Yes, absolutely, positively, I'm proud to say. That's not a nice thing to say?
No.
That's another topic.
No, nice to look at.
Oh, that's another topic. Yes, you're quite right, that's another topic. Yeah.
That's why you know the little thing.
Yes, exactly, oh, you got it right. Oh, yeah. Exactly my point. Same thing with working out in the hot sun.
That's about you. You weren't doing it.
When I get in that condition, anyhow.
So this is giving us the example of the car. We already know you don't know how to change the tire.
Change the oil.
Yeah, that ain't nothing to do with that. The point is, I was in the market for a new vehicle. Yeah, and I remember having this discussion when I changed my previous car, or maybe 2 cars ago. There used to be a time when F-150 trucks was a big thing for guys of a certain age, 20s. Yeah, I'm not knocking guys in their 20s. I used to be in my 20s one time. But it was a big thing. And Friendly Ford knew it was a big thing, knew the trucks were very popular, and they priced them accordingly. And you ended up with a waiting list for these trucks. And very often you find that by the time this truck got here, the price changed. Same make, same model, Now, of course, the dealership is gonna give you some reason, some rationale, and it may not make sense. But the bottom line is that, you know, demand was inelastic, so therefore I can raise my price. I know demand is inelastic because I have a whole waiting list of people who are willing to wait to buy my truck as opposed to somebody else's truck. Demand is inelastic, I raise my price. Demand, elastic, in this case, we're talking about, sorry, I keep saying demand. Supply is inelastic, so I raise my price. Okay. Calculation is done exactly the same with our new formula, not that previous one that you're doing for this current homework. So when we're calculating price elasticity of supply, we will be calculating the formula that uses both the absolute and the average.
So that's what you said, the homework.
No, not for this homework.
Okay,
The first one.
okay.
The first homework, this is the warm-up homework to get you into the mood of playing with numbers.
I see on page 18 where it says calculating price elasticity of demand and
That should be
ES.
supply.
Is that supposed to be supply or demand?
Supply. Why?
We are saying that,
I have to rewrite this whole thing. Or actually go through it with a fine
The bottom
tooth
is
comb.
income elasticity of demand. That right?
Price elasticity of supply, E of S.
No, I
Yeah,
didn't.
income elasticity of supply, that's what we.
Yeah.
No, income elasticity of demand is fine.
Oh, demand, yeah, the income elasticity.
We're about to get to that in a second.
What's the correct one for? So calculate the price elasticity
Flip the page.
of supply, right?
Yes. E of S is the percentage change in QS now.
No, the other one.
Oh, yeah, the first one.
60?
Yeah.
Yes? So elasticity of supply is fairly straightforward. We calculate it exactly the same way as we calculate elasticity of demand. And again, this is in absolute value terms. So any negative answer you come up with, you convert it to a positive as an absolute value.
Okay, I have another question.
Yes.
Why in the book, if we're following the same formula,
Mm-hmm.
it's saying the absolute value Q1 take away Q0,
Mm-hmm.
and you have QS1 take away QS0 in the middle of page 18.
We're talking about supply.
That's why it's of S.
I just wanted to distinguish from demand.
Okay, so it would be the same formula, you just add an S and D from.
Exactly.
Do we have to add F and D? When we model?
If you're gonna get confused about whether you're playing with S or Ds, then add it. If you're not gonna get confused, you won't. I mean, as long as you have, this is your elasticity of supply is what you're working with,
Yeah.
and you use your S, you use the actual quantity of supplies here, as opposed to, because you're gonna get a question where you have a list of quantity demanded and quantity supplied, so, and they would have, the little subscript. So you will have something that says, QD0, QD1, QS0, QS1, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and as long as you can pick out the right one,
Like
Yeah.
for the bottom, okay, where you have ES or E1, that does differentiate is supply and E1 would mean demand, right?
What are you talking about? I see
ES
that.
is
It's only ES or ED.
E is the
Well, to the
line.
bottom head,
No, we ain't get to that yet. That's an I.
I would know to write.
Well, we're going.
No, that's not a one, that's an I. We ain't get to that I yet.
So, okay, what I'm asking is because I wanna know if I should write this formula down, because you have something different from what is in the book.
No, he's saying that's to differentiate.
That's the
We
differentiation.
just something on the same thing. We just add the S
And
on this
demand.
one.
So that, I mean, supply is.
You're saying,
and
if
it's demand.
this is what's in the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what you're
And that's
So I'm
fine.
asking now, if this is supply, what we're doing now, and then we're going again to demand, and it's gonna be the same formula, or should I write it differently to
Right.
know ES and ED?
It's the same formula. The only difference would be we pick out different cues. All right. Let's say you have a word problem, and the word problem is going to tell you that demand for this product fell from X to Y, from 200 to 180. And the supply of this product changed from 150 to 220. You see, one of the quantities are associated with the demand, and one of those quantities are associated with supply. So when you decide, because you'll do two elasticity formulas. This will be your supply elasticity, and you'll have an elasticity demand formula. Right. And it will look like the formulas look exactly the same, but because in this case you're calculating elasticity supply, then you pick up the supply quantities. And in this case, you pick up the elasticity demand, you pick up the demand quantities. As long as you keep them straight, because if you look at the formulas in and of themselves are exactly the same. Right.
But that's what I was asking, like that, if only that ED and ES makes a difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. Remember now, these formulas are the way we're trying to calculate percentage change in quantity. Percentage change, a very precise way of calculating percentage changes. That's all these individual formulas are doing. In this case, because we're using quantities and quantity prices, we're measuring percentage changes in quantity and percentage changes in price. But this would apply to a very precise measurement of percentage change in any value. Percentage change, to say the height of people in this class. It will work out just as fine. I would take the absolute height from the tallest person to the shortest person. That will give the absolute. And then I could take the average height of everybody, and that will give me elasticity of height for this class. Right. Okay. Exactly the same formula would be if we're looking at elasticity of income of demand. Right. We know that as income rises, or demand for a good or service also rises, all other things being equal. Here I'm talking, I don't know which page we are, 18, 19? The income elasticity demand, which is written E of I, you find a different color. Is the percentage change in quantity demanded, how much demand change, but not when price changes, but how much demand changes when income changes. So this will be Q1 minus Q0 divided by Q0 plus Q1 over 2. But now instead of price, this is all income. I1 minus I0 divided by I0 plus I1 over 2. So, income elasticity demand measures the responsiveness of consumers to changes in income. you get a little money, how fast you go and spend all that money on whatever it is that you spend the money on. Now, there's a couple of differences between when we calculate income elasticity of demand and our elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply. Income elasticity of demand tells us two things. So when we calculate E of I, we find two things. We find out the degree of connection between our income and demand for the product, and we find out whether the product is a normal or an inferior good. Right. Also important to note here, a big NB, if you will, unlike price elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply, income elasticity of demand is not calculated as an absolute value. The negative sign is very important. All right. So income elasticity of demand is not calculated as an absolute value. Uh-oh. I guess I'm going to use that. That's so hard to erase. That's it. Did we throw an example and you did the, let's see. Okay. First of all, if we end up with a negative E of I, a negative E of I, the middle of page 18, indicates that as our income rises, demand for this good falls.
It's 19?
Page 19, yes. So if you calculate your income elasticity and you end up at a negative number, it says that your income and demand for this product go in opposite directions. All right, a negative sign always means that these things go in opposite directions. So that is saying when my income goes up, my demand for this product falls. When my income goes down, my demand for this product rises. Right? That's usually associated with what we call inferior goods, but that term has fallen out of use. These goods can also be classified as necessities. Right. This is the case. It's the last thing in your cupboard before you go to the food store. The kind of stuff that's left. Yeah, it's usually like maybe a can of tuna, corned beef, maybe some canned soup. Right? The kind of stuff where, listen, you've been putting off going to the food store, and listen, y'all gonna have to eat this and be satisfied because this is it. Right? And the minute you go shopping, anybody will eat that no more. They won't eat whatever it is that you get from the supermarket. That's what we're talking about. And income goes up, demand for these products falls, and the reverse is true. You see this in, say, family-oriented communities. You know, they talk about necessity being the mother of invention, and if you ever grew up on a family island, they found all sorts of very innovative ways to get by. Right? First time I went to Eleuthera, my grandfather was from Eleuthera, but I'm a city boy. But I was, 15? Fresh out of high school. I went on an excursion. You go on the mailboat and loud music, raw chicken, lots of beer. Okay, they said, chicken like pink on the inside. Anyway. But you don't notice because, you're drunk. Listen, when you're 50 years old and you're a boy, all right, loud music, beer, and girls, that's your life. Anyway, what was the point of my story?
Yeah, I remember.
Because you always distract me.
Say how they make do with the
Yes. My Grammy, God bless her soul, cooked some serious soup. and my grandfather killed his hog. I mean, killed the hog.
They
And,
want you to eat this soup?
and Grammy killed, grabbed a chicken and yeah, and then they had this like big wooden block, and she took a hatchet and yeah, Pop take a hog down to the sea to clean it. I ain't none of that.
Nah, we would not do that.
You're from the city.
I like my meat to come from the food store. Yeah, that's
You
just
don't see all that.
that's just me.
I don't see all that either.
But apart from all that disgusting stuff, Mama made sour leaf tea. I'd never had sour leaf tea. Now it was good.
That's good.
And then she made love wine tea, and she put cream in it, and it was yeah. No, you know when you go up drinking Lipton, yeah.
Lipton and we never done that.
Actually,
No.
Lipton, hot chocolate.
And then she did what's the other one?
Milo and Swiss Miss.
There was this bush that she used to grow in the back of the yard. Dill seed. We call it dill seed, actually dill, no seed involved. But, yeah, and she made, I drank tea day and night. Yeah, that was
You
good.
wanted orange tea too?
Oh, the orange lime, like the rind, and she let it dry.
Yeah.
And she did it with orange, she did it with big sour, she did it with lemon and not lime. The skin.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
You let it dry like I used to.
Yeah, and then you boil it, and then you drink the
Grapefruit skin.
peel the juice from it.
yeah. So that was all good stuff. Cause I mean,
Girls,
yeah.
so this comes straight off the
you didn't have to go to the store for tea bag.
Right.
Anyway, a positive E of I, that is a E of I that's greater than 0, indicates a positive relationship between our income and its product, and that makes it a normal good. So, first things first, we put down the formula. That always gives us a place to start, even when we don't understand exactly what we're being asked for. All right. So our income elasticity demand formula, E of I, Q1 minus Q0 divided by Q0 plus Q1 over 2 all over I1 minus I0 divided by I0 plus I1 over 2. All right. Seeing that he's going to give us the formula, I just have to make sure I plug and chug in the right way. Q1 minus Q0, Q1 is 770 minus 750 divided by 750 plus 770 for 2, which is 50,000 minus 42,000 divided by, oh, those numbers are going to get very small, sorry. 42,000 plus 50,000 over 2. All right, 770 minus 750 is 20 divided by, that looks like 760. That's
28.
50 and 20 divided by 2,
760.
760. Because I know 7, so 7 stay the same, and 50 and 70. All right,
8,000.
this is 8 divided by, that's what? 90, that's 92, so that's what, 46?
Yeah, 46.
All right, so 20 divided by 760,
0.0263.
what's after the 3?
1.
Okay, and 8,000 divided by 46,000, that's not as bad as I thought it would be.
0.1739.
What's after the 9?
1.
Okay. And 0.263 divided by 0.1739,
0.1512.
and after the 2?
3.
Now, any negative signs anywhere?
No.
Right. So, first things first, we know this is a normal good. Because you will be asked almost always normal. All right, and we know this is a normal good because this is positive. All right. So now that we know it's normal, is it elastic or inelastic? All right. We also know it's inelastic because it's less than 1. So there's no absolute value involved. Now, you certainly will be given your elasticity and either your income or your demand, and ask to find the other one. Yeah. So here you have your 1, 2, 3 unknowns. So you could be given any 2 of these and ask to find the third one. Same way we did with demand. But again, the basic concept is the same. Working them out is the same. You just to make sure you get the numbers right. All right. And in this case, income elasticity demand, the negative sign is important. All right. And the last one we want to consider is what is called cross price elasticity. So this is where you have related goods, where the price of one good affects the demand for the other good, associated goods. But in this case, we're talking about sensitivity. We're talking about responsiveness. All right. We're saying we know when the price of pancake batter changes, the demand for pancake syrup changes. All right. Because we consume those 2 goods together. All right. The question we're asking is how sensitive, how responsive we are when we see the price of pancake batter changes, how quickly, how responsive we are to adjusting our demand for the syrup. All right. It may be that the price of pancake batter fell, so I would expect demand for syrup to go up. Right? But I know I already have syrup sitting in the door of the fridge. Yeah. So I may not be as responsive because I already have some at home. All right. And that's what we're talking about. How rapidly we're willing to adjust our demand for the associated good. All right. Coke and Pepsi we think are substitutes. All right. So the price of Coke goes up. How sensitive or responsive I am to change the demand for Pepsi. It may be that I've convinced myself the mere fact that this says Pepsi and not Coke, I don't want it. Right? Because my brain tells me I like one and not the other, even though If I close my eyes, I can't really taste the difference. Nevertheless, people's attitudes and perceptions would affect their demand for a good or service. We talked about this as one of the factors that affect demand when we talk about taste and preferences. All right, so cross-price elasticity. This is page 20. In addition to price and income, we know that the price of associated goods, substitutes, and complements also affect the demand for a good or service. The cross-price elasticity of demand measures sensitivity or responsiveness of consumers' demand to changes in the price. Right. Two things the cross-price elasticity of demand looks at: the degree of connection between the price of associated good and demand for a given good, so the price of good A and the demand for good B, and whether the two goods in question are substitutes or complements. Right. So, when we calculate our elasticity, our cross-price elasticity of demand, the answer that we come up is going to give us two things. It's going to tell us whether those goods are complements or substitutes, and it's going to tell us how closely those two goods are tied together. All right. So it's going to tell us how much of a complement or substitute they are. So for example, right, let's say we calculate cost-price elasticity of demand for Coke and Pepsi. All right. And we find that when the price of Pepsi goes up, the demand for Coke goes up by almost exactly the same in percentage terms. In that case, we could say they are almost perfect perfect substitutes. All right. Because the price of Coke goes up by 5%, demand for Pepsi went up by 5%. People seem like they switch totally from one to the other. All right. But if they're not perfect substitutes, we would find there's a difference between when the price goes up by 5%, demand for this goes up by something other than 5%. If it goes up by more than 5%, it tells us something. If it goes up by less than 5%, it tells us something else. All right? So, a negative cross-price elasticity. So if we come up with a negative number, this says that as the price of good Y goes up, demand for good X falls. Remember that our negative always tells us that the things go in opposite directions. And a positive price elasticity does just the opposite. Now, one other thing to remember here is that the way this is written. No, I don't want to use this. Let's use the red. This is written E of X and Y. Right? In this case, when we write this is always the price, and this is always the quantity. All right. This would be the quantity of good X, the price of good Y. Right. If this is written, right, this would be the quantity good Y, and this would be the first one is always the quantity. Quantity of good X. In this case, first one, quantity of good Y. Second one is always the price. All right. So if, let's say, this is elasticity of bags to pencils, right, this will be the quantity of bags and the price of pencils. All right. If this was elasticity of apples to oranges, quantity of apples, price of oranges. All right. First one is always the quantity. Second one is always the price. All right. Let's run through at least just one example, and then we'll call it a night. The other thing we want to point out before we go further is that these two don't have to be the same number. Conceptually, apples and oranges. All right. If you are a parent, you like to give your child a fruit with their lunch because that's supposed to be good for them or something. I don't know. All right. So you say, okay, someday I give them an apple, someday I give them an orange. When you go to the supermarket, as far as you're concerned, they are substitutes. They're both fruit, and I need to give my child a piece of fruit every day. So whether I give them apple or orange depends on what's available, what I have in my fridge. They're substitutes. But, you know, if your child has a preference for one or the other, then the cross-price elasticity would be different. Yeah. Or if the price, when you go to the supermarket, of apples and oranges are different, then your sensitivity to change in the price is going to be different. All right. Let's say apples are more expensive because they come from further away or whatever. All right. So you are much more sensitive to change in the price. So usually you try to pick up an apple or an orange for your child, but you know, apples have been expensive, so eat orange last week, eat an orange this week, eat an orange next week. Because as far as you're concerned, they're substitutes. All right. But you're much more sensitive to change in the price. Okay. What about the reverse is true? The price of oranges goes up. But you figure, yeah, but apples are expensive. Yeah. So I may not be as sensitive, as responsive to a change in the price of oranges, because as far as I'm concerned, apples are still so expensive. So that's what we're measuring. So one, we're measuring whether apples and oranges are in fact substitutes or complements. And two, we're measuring how sensitive or how responsive we are to a change in the price of one, how it affects the demand for the other. That's what we're trying to do. All right. So one quick example. I already used apples and oranges example, so I don't want to use that no more. I don't know. Give me two goods. Give me two goods. All right. All right. All right. So I have Q0, Q1, P0, P1 of pens. And here's pencils. And Q0. No. Can I make this erasers?
Yes.
I'll tell you the second why.
Because pens are a little bit more than pencils.
No. Pens and pencils are both P's.
Oh, about these, okay, that's right.
Yeah.
When I say
Uh-huh.
pens and pencils, you say apple and orange, that's different.
All right.
You
So,
still have the same base.
sorry?
You gotta still keep the same base. Oh, no, that's quantity and pricing.
That's quantity and price.
Okay.
All right. So quantity erases, 15, 12 erases went from $1, $1.10. All right. Pencils. Pencils, what are we doing with pencils? 40, 50. And price of pencils. We do the price of pencils, pencils. $2. All right? Now, you're asked to do the following. Calculate the cost price elasticity of erasers to pencils and the cost price elasticities of pencils to erasers. So, all right, and as this is subject to a complement. Now, one, we're not sure whether erasers substitute or complements to pencils, but let's assume it's a substitute. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a substitute in the other direction. Only the numbers will tell us. We can assume, because in our heads it kind of sort of makes sense, but since we don't deal in this class with making sense, we deal in math and economics, let's see what we can do. All right, so let's put on our formula.
So the R represents erasers, so the R here.
You tell me.
I guess so.
Oh, you silly. You just trying to be cute. You just tell me it wrong. That's all you had to do. Yeah.
I thought you didn't know, but two E's next to each other, that was so good.
But yeah, I need to fix this too then. All right, fine. Can we proceed now?
Thank you.
So this would be Q1 minus Q0 divided by Q0 plus Q1 over 2 all over P1 minus P0 divided by P0 plus P1 over 2. Now, what are these Q's? These Q's are eraser Q's, right? So that's eraser Q. This allows me to keep them straight. All right. While I'm here, let's do Q1 minus Q0 divided by, you can put them underneath each other if you want, or wait until we finish. I want to do this one, because you may not have the kind of space that I have. But these, and all over P1 minus P0 divided P0 plus P1 over 2. And these Q's are pencil Q's. P, 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 P. All right. That allows me to keep my Q's straight. And I also have to do the same for my prices. So this is the price of pencils, yes? So this is double P, double P, double P, double P, and this is the price of erasers. So this is erasers, 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 erasers. All right. So assuming you can get this far and plug in the right numbers in the right places, you should be fine. All right. Okay. Yes, let's go. Let's do this. All right. So Q1, and on the eraser quantity, Q1 minus Q0 is 12 minus 15 divided by 15 plus 12 over 2. And the price of pencils.
110 take away.
No.
Pencils is
$1.80
like
and $2. $1.80.
180 minus $2 divided by $2 plus $1.80 over 2. All right, let's continue this. So we don't get 12 minus 15 is minus 3. Negative becomes important. 15 plus 12 over 2 is 27. What's half of 27? 13.5 over $1.80 is 20 cents. Negative 20 cents. Ooh, that's good. Divided by, that looks like $1.90.
$1.90, yes.
All right. 3 divided by 13.5. No,
That's a negative 0.2222.
0.2222. And after the last two?
2. All 2.
Okay, just check and see if you're still awake. And negative 0.2 divided by 90.
Divided by 190.
190.
Negative 0.0011, that would be.
Negative 0.0011. All right. And anybody know what negative divided by negative is?
Positive.
Every time. All right, so that looks like a whole number actually.
Divided by.
It's a big number too.
No, big.
No,
That's a
no.
different, that's one
That
point
was right.
98, no, that ain't right.
Minus
That's supposed to be 0.1053.
Which one are they?
$1.90.
That's supposed to be $1.90.
Oh, that's $1.90.
Yeah, that's what, right there, no, and the
Okay,
next one,
so-
the next one.
Oh,
No, the next
minus
one.
.20 divided by $1.90. Or you want
The bottom one where it says negative 0.
Yeah, that-
I don't think I have to rewrite, so that's supposed to be negative 0.0,
No.
negative 0.1.
Okay, let's start again. This one is still 0.022
That's right.
or just
Two.
2.222.
Yeah.
This changes.
Yeah.
Right, negative 0.1053.
3. Yeah.
All right.
So we got $1.90.
Clearly, for the first couple of homeworks, I'm going to give you all partial credits. Because y'all can screw this up, I know. Yeah. Okay, sorry. There's so many numbers, inevitably, you're going to step up. This is where the concentration is going to come in. All right, what do we get? Positive number,
2.1102, sorry.
2.1102. All right, fine. All right, first of all, substitute or complements?
Substitute.
It's positive numbers, so that means that when the price of one goes up, demand for the other goes up. That makes them substitutes. All right, so we know eraser is a substitute for pencil. All right, fine. And is it elastic, inelastic, or uninelastic?
Elastic.
Very elastic. So this says that this is the demand and this is the price, right? So when the price of pencil changes, demand for erasers changes by a lot. Right. That's 200%. I wonder if it's the same for if the price of erasers changes, what happens to demand for pencils? All right, let's see. What are my numbers like? Here we're looking for quantity of pencils. Quantity of pencils. So 50 minus 40 divided by 40 plus 50 over 2. And we're looking for the price of erasers. Price of erasers is 110 minus $1 divided by $1 plus $1.10 over 2. 50 minus 40 is 10 divided by 45 over, this is 10 cents, positive 10 cents, divided by $1.05, 0.05. All right, fine. 10 divided by 45.
.2222. Point 10.
Isn't that interesting? 3 divided by 13.5 and 10 divided by 45? And this is point 10
Point 10.
divided by 1.05. Sorry,
0.0952.
0.952. Positive, positive. So we know a positive, so they substitutes. All right, that's good. All right, and what's 0.222 divided by 0. Ooh, that's close.
2.3340.
Oh,
I'm a substitute.
that's nice. They're both substitutes for each other, and they're both very sensitive. All right, so very elastic, and they're both substitutes. So, I am sure you picked up for where the difficulty is going to come in. It's going one, figuring out translating the questions, and then secondly, making sure you put the numbers in the right place. All right, I got 8:30. Yeah, because we starting after we've done at least one homework on elasticity. We'll move on to consumer choice. So if you want to begin reading, this is page 21, I believe. But yes, you will have one homework. I'll give it out on. I'll give it out on. You have to give it out Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Today's Wednesday?
You're gonna send it by email?
Yeah, but there's Wednesday.
I can send it by email. I could,
For when?
but more likely,
Why didn't give it us on Monday?
yeah,
The homework and then.
yes. Generally speaking, I would give you homework on Wednesday and give you all weekend to work on it.
Yeah, I'll give it to us next Wednesday. But you're trying to make me falling behind.
No, we're moving at pace, despite the fact that, the all black thing went going on. Anyway, we'll figure it out. They'll only need 2 days to do answer homework anyhow, you don't need the whole 5. Thank you for, everybody signed my attendance register for school, and everybody got a copy of homework, and I think that's it. Thank you folks, I'll see you on Monday.
Sorry. I had to get over the
You take my stuff. All right, have a good evening.
You said we're doing this homework here, or you're saying that we're gonna start giving us the homework on which date?
No, I'll give you the homework on Monday.
This homework we're still
I'm
doing.
gonna have to.
This homework is due Monday.
Okay, we're still doing.
Are you sending us homework?
No, the paper, you didn't get the paper?
No.
What did he bring to you? He didn't give
I
it to you?
gave you homework.
I just got this, the course outline.
No,
Well, you didn't
when you
get a
first,
paper
when you first came in, I gave
When I-
you. Don't worry, I don't have to check.
No, I didn't get the
Oh, you didn't
homework when
get it?
I just came straight to my desk. Remember, I came.
Hey, you didn't see me walking behind you, giving you 2 pieces of paper?
Oh,
Don't worry about
What's
it.
this?
It's not that big a deal. It's the homework.
You didn't get that one?
No.
No? Get the rest
Oh,
of the stuff.
maybe I did?
Yeah.
I did?
Don't worry about it.
But hold on to it just
Where
in
I put
case.
it? Yes, sir. It's in here. Oh, yes.
I know.
Because I was gonna find you in my book. You want this back, Mrs. Demers?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I had a,
You want extras, eh?